Welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation. I'm Owen James. This is your Rangers news update for the 16th of November, guys. We are fast approaching the January transfer window, and already plans are being made for this January window. This man, Kevin Thelwell, obviously who is under a lot of fire at this moment after what I think has been described as pretty disastrous business in the summer. Many people obviously branding that they don't trust him with any money in January. However, I think we need to face facts that Thelwell will be here to see us through the January transfer window, along with his son, his mum, his auntie, his sisters, cousins, guinea pig and the hamster Colin as well. No doubt will be involved in the transfer business and the scouting too. But look, it is what it is, guys. We know this is going to happen. I think he will be given this window at least to prove that he is capable of doing a semi-decent job. Whether that is going to happen, who knows? Only time will tell on that one. Now, look, in terms of Kevin Thelwell and this man, Danny Rule, the Rangers head coach, there is a number of decisions to make, not only around who they need to bring in to replace certain players or to strengthen the squad in certain key areas, but also, in decisions to be made over players leaving the club, players exiting the club. Now, we've heard Nadim Bayrami has been one possible exit. Obviously he's talked about the fact that he is very unhappy with his lack of first team minutes at present, wants to play more first team football. So, it could be that a move for Bayrami, whether that be a loan with an option to buy or a straight sale, could happen during this January transfer window. Rule has also, along with Thelwell, got decisions to make about certain players as well, who are out of contract. Now, 4 of these players are John Suter, James Tavernier, Rabbi Matondo and Kieran Dowell. All are out of contract at the end of the 2026 season. Now, this obviously as well comes on top of the fact that a young youth prospect as well, who has been very highly rated and touted, certainly by me and by some others around the Scottish game, as being a potential star who hasn't had minutes. We'll talk a little bit about, Bailey Rice in a moment as well. But in terms of these 4, they're all out of contract at the end of this season. Now, look, there were stories at the start of the season as regards John Suter and his contract situation. People talking about a contract being on the table, but those contract talks now seem to have stalled or seem to have been stopped. Suter's had a very mixed season, hasn't he? He's been decent in parts and certain games, solid in other games, whereas at times he's been very, very poor. But certainly since Danny Rule's come in, he's looked a bit better, certainly as part of that back 3. Now, look, I'm not saying Suter is a top-class starting centre-half, certainly. I mean, you look at the likes, for example, of Cornelius and Giga, and the missing man Fernandez, and certainly, he's up there with them, but that's obviously that's no sort of recommendation. He is a starting centre-back for Scotland. He has started in a number of recent games. Now, it is, I think, a potential that we give him a new extension to his contract, at least as a squad player for the rest of the season. On the next couple of seasons might be worth having a look at that one. Other than that, you're basically letting him walk for free in the summer for absolutely nothing. Even if 6 to 8 months down the line we decide that this man is not for us, at least then you can sell him for a fee. Matondo and Dowell, look, I think you could try and sell them in January, but realistically, there's been no takers so far. I very much doubt there's going to be any takers for Kieran Dowell or Rabbi Matondo, both of who have flattered to deceive massively during their time in Glasgow. So I think, you're very much facing a situation with Matondo and Dowell where they will have to just leave for nothing at the end of this season. Now, the other player, obviously, that's been talked about is James Tavernier, the Rangers club captain. Now, look, on another podcast, there was a certain individual espousing extending his contract, which I think just proves to me that this individual knows jack all about football. I honestly believe that it would be a mistake to renew James Tavernier's contract. The guy's 2 to 3 seasons past his sell-by date. He can't defend anymore. His legs are gone. In Europe this season, he has been horribly exposed. In that Roma game, he just looked so out of place. He looked like someone from the pub league trying to play against someone from the Premier League. I mean, it really was that embarrassing. If Rangers were to offer him a new contract, a 1 or 2 year extension, it just shows that they're not moving forward, they're not making progress, they're not developing. honestly, I would be absolutely devastated if they gave James Tavernier a new deal. Another decision for head coach Danny Rule will be over youth player Bailey Rice. Now, Bailey hasn't had a fair crack of the whip, has a fair crack of the whip. I like Bailey. I think he's a good footballer. In those limited times he did come on in the season, last season I think it was, against Manchester United, for example. He actually looked quite a decent player. He was a player when he was at Motherwell, was rated more highly than Lennon Miller. So, look, I don't think that it's very fair, what's happened to Bailey Rice. I certainly hope that, he would be at least offered a new deal. But however, Bailey's got a decision to make at this point in time. Does he want to stay? Does he want to stay when he's probably not going to get a lot of first-team football, maybe? Nothing so far would indicate to Bailey that he's going to get that time. So I think this may be another Rangers youngster that walks for nothing who we lose out on, which I think would be just ridiculous, exceptionally ridiculous. But in terms of obviously the transfer window and the upcoming transfer window, like I said, whether we like it or not, I think he will be taking us through this window. This is what Kevin Thelwell had to say. He said, "It's probably an important point to make that whilst I and others will do a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure we get in a space where we bring targets to the table that we think could improve the group, it really is about Danny having the final say in these moments." Now, that to me says that the scouting and the player spotting is done by Thelwell, his son, his auntie, his sister, his cousin's hamster Colin. It's not done by Danny Rule and his people. It's done by Thelwell. Now, once Thelwell brings those players in, it's at that point that Danny Rule will have the opportunity to say yay or nay to them. So it does sound to me very much like the model is the sporting director finds the players, and the manager then says yes or no to them. Not that the manager goes to the sporting director and says, I want this player, I want that player, I want this other player. Now, this may indicate even further why Steven Gerrard and Kevin Muscat didn't take the job at Rangers, these comments. Personal thoughts on these comments that Kevin Thelwell makes shows, for me, a worrying control and a worrying power over the players, and the players were brought in by a man who clearly knows absolutely nothing about football. He went on to say, it's important as a sporting director that you don't bring players the head coach doesn't want to sign off on. So it's very much about us working together with, in this instance, Danny having the final say. But again, if you notice, it's coming back to the final say, not him saying, Kevin, I want you to go and look at player X, player Y, and player Z. It's Kevin Thelwell coming to Danny Rule and saying, I want you to look at this player M, player N, player O, and player P. These are the players that I think you need. And to me, that's worrying. That is concerning. Especially, like I said, when this man has had, for me, zero success in actually bringing players to the club. The majority of players that he has signed for the club, to me, that Russell Martin obviously must have signed off on, have not achieved anything and have not looked like decent players. For me, this model is not fit for purpose. It really genuinely is not fit for purpose. It will not move this club forward. It will not develop this club. Not as long as Kevin Thelwell is having a say in player personnel. The man clearly cannot do his job. And I think for me, what is worrying is what I said on the video the other day, that he has this sort of cancerous growth within the club that keeps on developing and spreading, with his son being involved, with his best mate Purdy being involved, with his new head of academy being a mate of his as well. It just seems a very much jobs for the boys, nepotism, Kevin Thelwell FC rather than Rangers FC. We're becoming very, very quickly. And look, if it was a sporting director who'd had great successes, someone like an Edu, for example, someone like a Berta, who Arsenal have got, a Richard Hughes, like at Liverpool, or someone of that ilk, a Davy Weir, a Sam Jewell, someone who'd had some success, then fair enough. But this man has had no success wherever he's been. So it is worrying times for me. Now, strong with Kevin Thelwell that he turns around and if the players that Thelwell brings to the table really aren't up to the task, he says, no, I don't want them. it's like I said, the transfer window is the indications and reports we're getting from the club are that there will be a fairly active window, whatever that may mean. I think it means players coming in and players going out as well. Interesting times, though, nonetheless. But I'll echo what I said. This model is not fit for purpose. It really is not fit for purpose. And as long as Thelwell continues to have some control over this, it won't work. Guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation, guys. We'll catch you on the next one.